welcome to Haystack Mujer TV. My name is Rosa Figueroa Mendoza, Rosa Salvaje, and we have a special guest today, Elisa Márquez. So I'm gonna, I just want to thank you for being here. It's a Sunday. We're here taking it easy, going nice and slow. And I want to give a shout out to Paul from East Bay Mobile Recording for, helping us out today with sound and recording and whatnot. But yeah, I want to pass it on over to you for you to tell us, you're from Hayward. You went to East Bay, you're a city council member, so I just want to get that story. So feel free to tell us about, what it's been like, to be here in Hayward.
All right. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Elisa Márquez, and I'm very honored and excited to serve as one of your council members. Thank you, Rosada, for the invitation. I really appreciate all the great work you're doing. I love watching your posts and just all your activity out in the community. So just to give you some background, I am 41 years old. I've lived
41
years
41 young.
Yeah. 41 years young. Woo. I've lived here my entire life. I know people love to say born and raised. I can't say that because I wasn't actually born here, but I was born at Eden Hospital in Castro Valley and came home to the same house that I'm living in right now. I've actually moved bedrooms, but it's the same exact home. So there's a lot of pride for me in being able to raise my daughter in the same home that I grew up in. So my experience in Hayward has been, I think, very diverse. I've been very fortunate, even though, like I said, I live in the same house. I went to school in North Hayward for kindergarten. Then I went to Glassbrook. Then I went to Shepherd. Then I went to Fairview. Then I went to Bret Harte. And then I went to Hayward High. So that really gave me an opportunity to kind of see, even though I'm from South Hayward, but going to schools in different neighborhoods was a huge eye-opener in terms of not everything's the same in my neighborhood as I thought it was in terms of the entire city. So that really opened my perspective in terms of the needs in the community, kind of access to information and resources. So just really proud to be homegrown and deeply rooted. And because of that pride is one of the main reasons why I continue to serve. I want to say in a volunteer capacity, but council members, we do receive a check for the work we do. A lot of people think it's substantial and we make a lot of money. We don't. Most of us have full-time jobs and other commitments in order to meet our family's needs. But I definitely feel those that serve are doing it because they want to make a difference. They're really committed to the vision and wanting to lift up the community.
Yeah, for sure. What's that experience been like of now you're a council member and you're from South Hayward and just having grown up in and like you mentioned, going to schools in different parts of Hayward, how has that fed into your experience of being a council member?
I think, like I said, it's a real eye-opener in terms of, sometimes I feel there's a huge disconnect. Hayward is such a large city, the population's growing. Sometimes I feel that the voices of the neighborhoods aren't being represented or being heard. When I initially got onto the council, I was actually appointed, and a question that was asked to me during the interview was, are we doing enough for South Hayward? And I said no. And I'm there in front of the people that are deciding whether or not to appoint me. And it's like, you got to have candid and honest conversations. The question was asked, and at the time, I felt like we weren't doing enough for South Hayward. Now it's become a priority with the will and the vision and the leadership of the council. But even the fact that it is a priority, it's going to take years to implement the goal. But it feels good to be part of the conversation. But I also struggle because I'm also very mindful of, even though now we're talking about South Hayward, I don't want other neighborhoods to feel neglected. We've got the west side, we've got north side, we've got the hills, we've got downtown. So just trying to strike that balance on making sure that the decisions we make, that we spread them throughout the community.
And welcome back. We have Elisa Márquez, and you were actually talking about South Hayward and the work that's being done in South Hayward. And if you could talk a little bit more about what's going on council, and also from your perspective, what needs to be done in South Hayward? What is most crucial?
Yeah, so one point I was making earlier was I'm currently the chair of the Council Infrastructure Committee. So we review all the capital improvement projects first. We have a first take and kind of weigh in and give feedback to staff before it goes to the council. So one thing we've implemented recently is making sure that every project that comes before that committee, that we look at it through a lens of equity and social justice. So not just focusing, like I said, my pride, my home, if we had districts, it would be South Hayward, but City Council, we're all at large. We're elected to represent the entire community. But just being mindful, even though I deeply care about South Hayward and I want to see progress, we also have to make sure that we're not neglecting other parts of Hayward. So just trying to strike that balance and making sure that whatever decisions we make, that it's fair. If we're doing something in one neighborhood this year, then we got to look at a different neighborhood like in the following year. So in terms of priorities for South Hayward, one of the things I'm most excited about is the South Hayward Youth and Family Center. We're going to completely redo that. We have a Fire Station 7 that was remodeled a few years back. We have the Firehouse Health Clinic, which is an important service for our community because we lost Kaiser Hospital. It's a place where people can go for urgent care needs. They don't need medical assurance. I think a lot of people aren't aware of the value of having that medical clinic in South Hayward. It is off of Huntwood, right next to the fire station. They're also constructing Mia's Dream Land Park, which is going to be an accessibility park for kids with all different type of developmental, physical, sensory disabilities. So it's going to be the first of its kind in the East Bay, all-inclusive park. Very excited about that. You'll see some murals on Tennyson, more to come. We're going to be doing landscaping in the medians. All the roads are going to be repaved. There's a huge opportunity with the former Kaiser building, which is on the corner of West Tennyson and Hesperian. That's a catalyst site in terms of what's going to be developed there. We don't have any offers at this point. Kaiser does own that land, but the fact that they demolished the building, it's important also that we make sure that the land in Hayward is kept beautiful and safe. You know, we don't want these old dilapidated buildings and just causing more issues in our communities. We want to make sure that the landowners are being responsible. Another fun thing is we have the 6th annual Tennyson All-America Festival, which is going to be on Saturday, June 29th. So that's a way to bring the community together. It's in advance of 4th of July, but a way to celebrate and just kind of, you know, connect with each other. So I think the more we do in terms of outreach efforts. One thing I'm very excited about is last September, we had the first ever City Hall meeting in South Hayward at the Matt Jimenez Community Center. And that was very, very well attended. So I'm looking forward to doing that again in the upcoming year and also looking at doing it in other neighborhoods in Hayward. I think it's really, really important. Even though City Hall is maybe a 10-minute drive from South Hayward, for some people they feel very, very disconnected. They don't feel necessarily welcome. So the more that we can get out and do outreach and bring people into the meetings, I think we'll have a more engaged community and people feeling that their voices are heard.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And a lot of what you're saying sounds amazing. Also, what do you think is the role of the community in being able to push forward the work? You know, because a lot of people feel like, for example, you're elected to council, so you should take care of everything. And that's really not the reality for anything, really, especially when it comes to community organizing. If people want to see change, they themselves have to be willing to say, you know what, I can give an hour a week to going to a meeting or whatever it is. And so if you could talk a little bit more about maybe that disconnect that sometimes people don't make of social change, where they think that I want this, I want that, but they themselves are not willing to put in the work.
Well, I think you personally are a great example of that. You and I met, I don't even know, maybe over 2 years ago, and Rosado basically called me out, like the city's not doing enough and what's going on, and she had a long list.
But I wasn't doing shit.
and I looked at her and I was just like, well, there's all these opportunities. There's different clubs, there's different nonprofits, there's boards and commissions. You could even serve on a board of a nonprofit. So we just kind of exchanged ideas. And I really admire you. I think you took that information, obviously conversations with other people, and you built something in our community. And that's what we need. You know, a lot of people go to San Jose, Oakland. We had that conversation for social justice movements and advocacy. And it's like, we don't have to do that. We have our own issues here in Hayward that need to be addressed. So I think first of all is just don't be intimidated. Take the time to learn and listen. Come to a council meeting, observe the dynamics. You could watch them online live. You could watch them pretty much the next day. They're uploaded on our website. We have Access Hayward, a free app that you could give us any kind of input, submit complaints. I would definitely subscribe to our Haystack Newsletter that gets distributed every month. We have another newsletter that focuses on sustainability issues. You can get updates for council meetings. So I would say just take the time to learn those avenues. You can schedule a meeting with any of us council members. We're very, very accessible. So get to just know what the issues are. And I would just encourage you to take the time to learn and give honest feedback. None of us are experts. We don't have all the answers. We do need the feedback, but like you said, we can't do it alone. We need community support. And I feel like the community does have a responsibility to register and vote, to vote. And we have a lot of people in our community that are undocumented, but they still have a voice in our community. They can come to council meetings. They could speak in public comments. They can go to school board meetings. They can meet with us one-on-one. They could call, they can email. So I don't want anyone in our community to feel like I have to meet this certain criteria in order to get engaged and involved. You have to really want it within yourself to see that change. But once you find that one thing you're passionate about, whether it's housing, climate, safety, whatever that is, just take the time to kind of learn what's available. And then I think once you become more engaged, I think you'll be excited, because I think you'll find that most of us are very receptive and we want to hear your ideas and what you have to say and the honest feedback, whether it's good or bad. You know, that's the way we learn and grow.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm thinking about the youth that I've been working with at the Eden Clubhouse through the Youth Advisory Council. And, you know, we had that event at the Jimenez Center, and we had a meeting recently, and one of the conversation topics that came up was that there's people, the youth want to do something. They say that one of them in particular was saying, and she's from Hayward High, you know, she was saying that it's hard because a lot of people don't know where to start, right? Like, where do you start exactly? And so I was letting her know, you know, you really have to start, I think, from your interests. Like, what do you care about? What are you passionate about? You know, because you're going to connect a lot better if, like, if you're doing something random that has nothing to do with your own personal life, you're going to eventually get drained, you know, and it's going to feel very, very just tiresome in a lot of ways. Not that it's not important, but you know, really being able to zoom into, for example, if you're really into art, you know, okay, let's do more art in Hayward, right? Having more people and just being involved. So that's just something that came up from the youth, right? And the youth know what's going on. Like, for whatever reason, like, I was surprised to hear from them and how, like, insightful they are. They know what's up, you know, and so you know, through the surveys that we did through the relief campaign, we found out a lot regarding stress and what youth deal with, especially in South Hayward. Since we're based in South Hayward, the work is being done out of South Hayward. We talked to other students though outside of South Hayward, right? And so a lot of them were saying that to deal with stress, you know, they smoke weed or they cut or they you know, there's a couple mentions of like sexual assault that they're dealing with, right? And so there's a lot going on with youth, but we need to provide hopefully programming that's going to be diverting them towards positive, you know, outcomes, right? That's right. And so it sounds like it's interesting because it, like, just talking about it like, I just want to open up that conversation of like, it's really, really important for Hayward youth to feel, because I didn't feel that when I was
connected.
younger.
I think it's
connected.
We want
to their hometown.
We want them to have that sense of belonging,
right?
That they're valued and that their life is meaningful and they do have a purpose. Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to kind of figure out what that is, but I think the most important thing is to communicate. You know, to have peers, peer mentors, or young leaders that are accessible. And I think we just need to. I feel like people need to check in with people. I think a lot of times we talk, which is great in communication, but a lot could be said with nonverbal communication. Just does someone look upset? Are they angry? Just their body movements. You know, if we could just be more mindful of that and check in with people, I think it just takes one person to know that someone else cares about them. And you just kind of open that window of opportunity. And it's like once you start talking to people, like you said, they have different passions. Once you talk to people that are connected in the community, I think a lot of people in Hayward are really good at introducing to other people. Well, you should meet so-and-so, or did you know about this? There's a lot of wealth of information sharing. I think that's one thing that makes Hayward unique. And what I love about Hayward is truly, it's not so much the buildings, the climate, you know, we have all these strengths in Hayward, but I think generally, it's really, really the people that make Hayward what it is.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
And that's, for me personally, why I'm still here. You know, all my friends that I grew up with, they've all left Hayward. And for me, it's just like, I see the strengths, I see the weaknesses, but for me, it's a personal commitment to do my part. I never claim I'm an expert, I have all the answers, because I don't. But I know that I have time, energy, and passion, and I have something to offer. And I feel like we all do. We all have different skills, different sets. And maybe it's just listening. We're great listeners, you know, whatever that is. If we can all give a little bit of our time to other people, I think overall things would be moving in a better direction.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
We're just so stuck with the commute and the responsibilities, and everybody I know has multiple jobs. You know, but this is a really different period in life, and that's why it is hard for people to get connected and engaged, because once you do start volunteering, there are responsibilities and time commitments, right? So also looking at ways maybe the city could be more flexible in encouraging community involvement.
Yeah, for
approaching it in a different way.
But something that you said is really key is just sometimes it's just listening, asking questions. You know, people, I think, especially youth, but I think also people in general, they want to tell their story. They want to say what's going on with them. They just need to find people that they trust that actually care, right?
That's not going to be
have that
judgmental.
intention. Yeah, that have that intention of caring and exactly not non-judgmental, because that's something that the youth have mentioned too. We want someone to listen to us that's not judgmental. That's right. A lot of the times, you know, we tell our problems to maybe our parents or whatever, because I've had that experience, and it's like, you're dumb, like why'd you do that or whatever, and then you don't feel safe, and then you don't tell nobody, and then you're dealing with these things in isolation, right?
Absolutely.
And so going back to what you were saying about just in general, like the work that is being done on council, you know, what has been, I know you talked a lot about like, you talked some about like what's being done in South Hayward, but like, what is some of the larger like projects that are happening on council?
So for me personally, one that I definitely committed to and worked really, really hard is housing policies. And I'm happy that we're discussing it. We have a housing and homeless committee that Councilmember Lamnin, Wahab, and Selena sit on. But for me personally, that is a struggle because I've been advocating for these policies well over 3 years. And it feels like it wasn't until maybe a year and a half until the collective also started being more engaged in the community that as a council body, everyone was finally open and willing to start having some more in-depth conversations. So that it's a struggle because I'm happy we're having the conversations, but it's an internal struggle for me because I felt like when I was voicing this years ago, if it would have been given the time and the attention it deserved at that time, I just feel like we would have been further along with a lot of our policy decisions. So we can't live in the past. We got to move forward. We're here now. But for me personally, and I think that when I was bringing this up, and I said this to my colleagues, is I was coming from a place of, I've lived in Hayward my entire life. I worked for the city of Oakland for 9 years. And then in the past 7 years, I've been working in downtown San Jose. So I feel that I'm able to see that regional perspective and what's occurring in our communities. And when I brought this up 3-4 years ago, whatever the year was, I said very clear, the housing stuff is going to come to Hayward. It's around the corner. And it was. And so that's where just the frustration is. I feel like if we would have taken it more seriously then maybe we wouldn't have lost as many community members. Because for me, I feel like it's a constant struggle to retain and preserve the people that have lived in Hayward for decades. That's really, really important to me. We also need to work really, really hard. We need all our community partners, all our faith-based leaders to focus on the census. We have that next April, and it's going to be imperative that we count every person in our community.
Right, especially with that question that they're trying to add about citizenship.
About citizenship, absolutely. And that's important because that brings in community development block grant funding to Hayward. It helps with the funding that we got from the Hayward Promise Neighborhood Grant. It just has a lasting domino effect. And right now there's all this fear going on with all the negative rhetoric on the federal level. So we want to make sure that we message and we get out to our community members early and let them know not to be fearful. But yet again, even though I'm a council member, I don't feel necessarily it's the council's place to go and give this message to the neighborhoods. I think we need to look at community leaders, neighborhood influencers. I feel will be more effective than your mayor or your council member telling you what you should care about. Yeah. So it's just kind of our approach. We need to be flexible in Hayward.
What do you think are some of the setbacks, not just on council, but like Hayward in general, in organizing, uniting people, bringing folks together around a common issue, goal, whatever?
Honestly, I just feel like it's time. It's timing. You know, people I think are intimidated. I think there's a desire, there's a need, but then when you look at the cause, it's so overwhelming. It's like, who has 10, 15 hours to give a week, right? So if we kind of break it down like a timeline, like phases, like these are our 3-5 priorities, we're going to focus on this one because there's an urgent need because of the climate, whatever is going on in the community. And you've got to come at it in a collective way, right? No one could do it alone. Like people, some good at social media, some are good at letter writing, communicating, reading, whatever that is. It's kind of like you have to break down those steps. So I think if people could be honest and approach things that this is my strength, this is my time commitment. And if more people can do that, then it's easier to approach an issue when you know you're sharing in that responsibility.
Yeah, for sure. And that's something I've learned through time in organizing, is that not everybody's going to be interested in doing the public speaking or doing the emails to council or whatever it is. There's a lot of different roles, and that's something that I told the youth too. You don't have to feel pressure to be something that you're not, or to do tasks that you're not passionate about. You can focus on what you want to focus on and just keep doing that, and that will attract, because that energy attracts people to say, oh, there's something going on in the community. That person's doing that thing. Yeah. Oh, maybe I should focus on this other thing that I really care about.
Like with someone who's maybe an introvert, they might be amazing at research. You know, like here's some speaking points, and you kind of just collectively bring your skill set and your strengths together so that as a group, you guys can address an issue. So I think if people were just more open-minded and honest, you know, for me, it's really hard being on the council. I sit on lots of committees, some are even regional, and I want to do like this, you know, kind of social movement outside fun festival stuff, but it's like, I only have so much time. And the thing that I want the public to know is that I do have a full time outside from being on council, and I have a daughter in college. So for me, it's like at the end of the day, I've got to read my staff reports. I got to show up to my committee assignments. So even though there's lots of asks and lots of needs in the community, I have to kind of triage and have my own priorities, right? Because if I show up to every community event, but I didn't read my staff report and I don't know what the heck they're talking about on Tuesday night, I don't feel that I'm going to be an effective council member. So even though as much as I'd love to do more public stuff, at the end of the day, I have to be prepared for my meetings and I have to show up to these meetings. And I think that's a struggle because sometimes the public doesn't realize, like for example, the staff report this Tuesday, it's over 400 pages, you know, and we're meeting nearly every Tuesday. Plus we have committee assignments, you know, so I think there's a bit of a disconnect in people not understanding the workload. It's a very, very demanding position. One that obviously I'm doing it because I love it, or else I wouldn't, because we have to deal with a lot of stress and a lot of pressures. But I feel like you have to have that balance of being prepared and present at meetings, and then also interact, connect, and be engaged with the community. Right. But if it was all about going to community events, it'd be a fun job, right?
Right. Yeah. But that's interesting that you say that, because I feel like I've had conversations with folks where it's really, really easy to attack, let's say, the mayor or council or the people that have power. And don't get me wrong, if you feel really strongly about like, hey, the mayor's not doing this, or the council member or the city manager, they're not doing their job, then so be it. Like, please talk to them, you know, tell them, organize, go to public comments. But I think there's also this other side, the flip side of like y'all's workload, right? Of how much you actually you do to be prepared to go to the things that you already go to, right? In terms of meetings, council meetings, and
it's not just council. Like we all have several committee assignments. It's not just the public sees the Tuesday meeting because it's in the chambers, right? It's very public. All of our meetings are public and they're noticed, but they're in room 2A or maybe on the first floor. So you don't get that much public engagement. Yeah, for sure. I think it's really important for people to hold people in power accountable, but also having that fine balance of like respect. Just respect. How about ask the question first? If you're upset about something, tell me why you're upset and why. What do you think it is that you think that we're not doing? Because half the time when you know the information, then it kind of de-escalates because it's like, oh, I didn't realize. Right. You know, so I think we just all have to ask questions. Right. And I felt like I was like kind of like that before we met. Like, how come we're not doing this? How come we're doing blah, blah, blah? And you were like, well, we have this. Oh, okay. Well, I'm just not involved. Like, you know, because when I was here, I went to Mount Eden, graduated 2009, went to San Jose State, was over there for 5 years, came back in 2014 after I graduated. And I felt like I want to be more involved in my community. I just don't know what's going on. And so it was really easy for me to be like, there's not this, there's not that, how come there's a lack of blah blah blah. And I was feeling really upset, like why are we not doing more, right? While at the same time
beginning to understand, well, you don't even, like, you're just now getting involved, you know, and like learning the landscape and learning the players and who's who and what, who does what and things like that, right? So it takes a while, like, so anybody out there that like wants to get involved in Hayward, it just takes some time to get used to the landscape.
I just respectfully ask that you take the time to ask some questions and learn. And then I'm sure you have great ideas or things that we could do differently. But I think we all just need to pause a little bit and just do an inventory. What's truly going on? And if you see a gap, then let us know. But I think we all need to just not be so reactionary and just take the time to kind of find out first, get some of those questions answered. Because I'm pretty sure you could be up here upset, but once you take that time to have that conversation, you're not going to be happy, but it'll come down a bit in terms of your understanding or ease of the situation.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And if you could explain a little, because honestly, and I've told you before, like, there's stuff that is really, really important, but I'm just gonna be honest, like, it bores me, it drains me. I don't want to be involved in the process. There's people within the collective that are really understanding of like housing policies, the housing process, all that stuff. And honestly, I'm not as involved because I'm over here doing other types of organizing, right? And it ties back to the conversation we're talking about of like, do what you're interested in, because that's where you're going to be most effective, right? But talking about, you know, what are, and maybe using the referral process as an example, like what was that? And also like, why is it important for people to maybe tune into council meeting videos or going to council or reading the notes or whatever it is?
So I think my biggest suggestion I could give everyone, and I say this all the time in council meetings, people get tired of it, but watch the video. If you're not going to come to a meeting, and I get it, life, work, responsibilities, but take the time to watch the video. You could fast forward to the specific agenda item you're interested in. You don't have to watch the 4 or 5 hour long meeting. You can rewind, fast forward, but watch the meeting. And it's so important because if you read the minutes from a meeting, they're action minutes. They don't quote us, they're not verbatim. So you don't really get a feel of the actual meeting. And to be honest, even when you watch the video, I feel like you still don't get the entire sense of what occurred, because when you're present in a council meeting, you could see the body language, you could see the reactions. The video, the audio doesn't necessarily capture everything that's occurring in that space, right? But it's the best option you have, because the minutes, I don't think, do any council meeting justice. But the referral process, the way that came about is historically, as a council member, I want to go back to the structure. So there's the mayor and 6 council members. We're either elected or appointed. We're in the position to adopt policy, adopt the city budget for the city of Hayward. We are only responsible for 3 hires: the city manager, the city attorney, and the city clerk. Everyone else falls under the purview of the city manager. So the city manager is basically like the CEO of the city. So when people get upset, like, oh, you guys didn't do this, didn't do that, we don't directly manage City of Hayward employees. That's the city manager's responsibility. It's the city council's responsibility to give policy direction after it's adopted to the city manager and staff. They have to implement what we actually vote, right? So the thing with the referral is, as a council member, right now I can, you know, when I meet with the city manager, I can make suggestions, I can make referrals. Whenever we're going to do something that's on a policy level, that's going to change.
When you say referral, you mean being able to refer someone to the position?
No, like, let's say, for example, I have a neighbor and they're upset because they want a street light on their street, right? So then I could put in an email to the city manager, can you please have the appropriate staff follow up on this? I don't have to do that in a council meeting, right? Because that's just something that's directly impacting a neighborhood. But if you want something more substantial, like a policy decision, anything related to housing, services, anything that's going to have a financial impact on the city budget, that requires more staff research and time and come back with a recommendation. So in the past, as council members, if we had a referral, we would just kind of propose this idea. It's at the end of our agenda, announcements and referrals. Council member Lamnin could have proposed, I'm just giving an example, I want us to look into this navigation center idea. Do I have my colleagues' support? So if you get 3 more people, what we called was a head nod, agree with you, then staff would look into it. So when Councilmember Wahab was elected, she felt like that was very unclear. Did you get 2 nods? Did you get 3 nods? And then we're not taking minutes on that, right? It's just kind of, if you're watching the video. So it was really kind of fuzzy on what was the recommendation, who supported it, and who didn't. So to more formalize it, so it's in writing and we actually have a vote. I forgot when we adopted this, but it was a few months back. So now we have a new policy, which is now in place, where you can write a memo. So it's a written memo. This is the policy idea. This is what I want my colleagues to agree with me to further refer staff to look into. So a referral, all you're asking is for staff to do research and for it to come back to the entire council to be adopted. So referral now is simply a referral. But it's good that we have it in the memo, because now we have to take an actual vote. So the public can know what was the idea being presented, who presented it, and what were the votes. Did it get support or did it not? And you can know actually how each member voted.
Got it.
So that's how we got to the referral process, which is, the first one was done at the end of March was the very first one. That's new to the council. It's not something we did.
Let's come back to that. Okay. So we're gonna take a quick pause.
Sure, sorry.
Thank you so much.
That was long-winded.
We'll come back.
You can edit.
What's up, people? Welcome back. So I'm sitting here with Elisa Márquez, city council member, and you were just explaining right now the referral process, and just honestly, like, me getting my own understanding of the process, because I feel like there's a lot that goes on in council that just goes over my head, and if it's going over my head, then maybe other people's heads, and it kind of maybe discourages people from being involved in the process, because there's just a lot that goes on, right? And so there's a lot of them, which is not to say that it's not important. It's just that it like, people don't understand it, right? And so I definitely appreciate you being able to explain the referral process in particular, and just giving a wider scope of how things actually go down in council, because that could, again, a lot of people maybe make assumptions. I know I've made assumptions about, like, it should be really easy, or it should be this, or it should be that, right? Because I've been involved in, I know I've gone to, like, city council meetings in San Jose, and it's like, why don't they just vote on this thing that I think is really important, right? But there's a whole structure to it.
So one of the main things is, because we're part of a local government and we operate under the city charter, which is basically like our constitution for the city of Hayward. So everything has to be legally public notice. The public has the right to know everything on the agenda. So even if people come in public comments and I want you to do this and that, that's not on the agenda. Technically, we can't even talk about it. That's why public comments is available for anyone to come and speak on any item not on an agenda. If you want to speak specifically about an agenda item, then you fill out the speaker card and speak specific to that item. And I do agree that the council chambers, could be very intimidating. For us personally, it's even uncomfortable sitting up on the dais. The lighting is different, even being down at the podium when you speak in public comments. So I think I would just encourage people to go and observe first, and then maybe at some point speak on public comment, maybe something that you're not truly passionate about, but just to get your feet wet, so to speak. Like, I'm just here to introduce myself, first time I'm watching this meeting, and I want you all to know that this is happening in my neighborhood, or whatever the issue is. So maybe, like, for your first public speaking in a council meeting or a school board meeting, maybe don't go when it's something you truly, truly care about. Try to go a little bit earlier in advance something else, just to kind of get that exposure. Because I think with anything, you just want to know kind of what to expect and what it feels like, right? Like, kind of preparation. But I don't want anyone to feel like embarrassed, or that I would hate if anyone felt that we were being rude to them. That's not okay, and there is a lot of stuff going on in our community where emotions are really high, and there's a lot of stuff going on. So I think it's our responsibility to listen to everyone, whether we agree with them or not, because we want people to have that sense of, I can share my thoughts and opinions without having a negative reaction, want it to be a safe place. But unfortunately, everyone has to be accountable for their own body language, their own response, and their own action. And so hopefully, we're doing, I can only speak for myself. I try to do a good job at that. But I've noticed sometimes I'm overwhelmed, I'm frustrated. Sometimes I could do an eye roll or a sigh or something, I'm human, but I try not to, because you really want to be respectful to anyone that's talking. And then it's hard because you also want to, like, almost debate someone, because some of the stuff might not be accurate, but that's not our place. They have the right to say what they want. And if we really want to correct something, then we can maybe address it with that person after the fact.
Yeah.
But
sure.
yeah, I mean, there's no right or wrong answer other than you just kind of have to go and experience it. And then some people might be nervous and they come and they're like, oh, that wasn't so bad, you know? But I would just give it a shot, like just give it a try, get your feet wet.
Yeah, for sure. And I know that we went recently with the Youth Advisory Council to invite during public comments the public to, and also the council and the mayor, but just like the wider public, right, to be able to come to the May 18th event that we had at Matt Jimenez Center. And
I think they got clapped, like everyone loved it. They did a great job.
One student in particular, she does public speaking, she's on debate, but the other student, you know, I was really proud of him because like I don't really think that he was used to speaking in front of people, right? And there was a point where he kind of I think he had written something down, but like he like got really passionate and was just like really on it, and it's like like that's exactly what it's about, you know, being able to share your true feelings on a specific topic, right? And so I definitely appreciate this space to be able to talk and continue learning from the side of the council, right? I'm sure that y'all get bombarded with a lot of different things, and so how do we come up with a way to be respectful and mindful of your position, because I'm not in your position, so there's a lot of things I don't know, but also still hold you accountable of the things that I care about, right? You know, and so one thing that's coming up is, you know, Justice for Augie, right? The family's going today's Sunday, June 2nd, you know, so this coming Tuesday, June 4th, at 7, the family's going to go ask that the council vote on an independent investigation. So I just want to get your thoughts on that, if you could speak a little bit more about that.
So because the referral process, like you said earlier, is so new, I know one thing that the mayor has said, because the referral, like I said, about the Brown Act and everything having to be agendized, technically, even though the referral is on the agenda, we're not supposed to get into like a lengthy deliberation. Like there's not even a staff presentation. It's just kind of like, here's the request for the referral. We're supposed to just vote on it. Do we agree with it or not? But one thing we have instituted with the referral is people from the public have a right to weigh in, even if it's a referral, telling us to vote for it or not. So there will be an opportunity for the public to weigh in. But on the referral process, public comments is limited to 1 minute rather than 3 minutes for other items. Because right now, what we need to know from the public is, do you support this referral or not? And you could tell us our reasons why either way. So technically, because we are a local decision-making body, none of us are supposed to be going out there stating a position prior to the agenda. So I can't give you my honest take on it because the matter hasn't come up yet. It will happen Tuesday night. And that's where I feel gets really, really tricky with it. And I have to be careful too, because I know I've often encouraged people to come on items, but I'm very careful on encourage you to come and weigh in. I can't tell you how to vote or what to say. Right. Nor should, the public has the right to tell us their thoughts and what they want from us, but we have to be very careful in stating a public vote and opinion before the matter has even been heard. We can get in trouble for that. Gotcha. It's kind of part of our like operating guidelines, so to speak. It could be a violation of the Brown Act if we publicly go out there and say, this is how I'm going to vote on it. Whether it's yay or nay, we really have to wait for the actual hearing to occur. Gotcha. So that's what makes it complicated. And I think that's why the public gets frustrated, because it's like, why aren't you telling me your position?
What would you say for people out there? And again, this is not a question of like, tell me your thoughts on the matter, right? Or what way you're going to be voting. But I guess, what would you say to folks that have been, like the family of Agustin Gonzalez, right? They're calling for justice for Augie, right? And so what would you say for families out there, not just in Hayward, but just families that have dealt, of course we're dealing in particular with Hayward, families that have dealt with police brutality or feeling that there's an injustice or whatever it is? What would you say to those folks?
I think they have to continue to stay active and engage. Their presence does matter. It does make a difference. Some people feel comfortable going to public comments. Some people rather have a one-on-one meeting. Some people might want to send an email, but definitely just to continue to voice their concerns, because even though it's difficult, because I could listen to people, I can't respond because there is pending litigation between the city and the family, so we can't engage in a conversation. But there's nothing wrong with me hearing their concerns, and I am confident it's going to take time, and I know it's very frustrating to the family and the public, but I would say 6-9 months from now, we'll be in a different place, and we'll have an opportunity to say more and do more about the situation. But right now, because it's so recent and because of the pending litigation, we're really, really limited on what we could do. And that's got to be very, very frustrating for the family, because I know they want answers and I don't blame them. But because of pending litigation, there's time limitations and constraints on what can be said at this point. That's not going to be the case forever. So my request is just, I'm never going to tell them to stop feeling what they're feeling or saying what they're saying. They have the right to do that. But it's just hard for me, because it's like I have to respectfully ask them to just kind of give it time and see kind of like the outcome of things. But unfortunately, I can't, no one can fast track it. And that's what's frustrating. But I do feel like this is an opportunity for Hayward to kind of assess what occurred and, you know, in the future.
Right. Yeah, and for anybody that's not familiar with the case, you know, I encourage you to please, anything that you hear, you know, especially during this conversation, any questions that you have, you know, you could always ask me, you could always, you know, reach out to Elisa or whatever it is, right? But again, the point of this conversation and all conversations that I try to have is, you know, opening up the space for, it's okay to ask questions. Like, if you don't know, you don't know. If you want to get involved, then, you know, talk to the people that you see that are involved, right? Talk to the people that have the wherewithal, right, to be able to connect you. But it's really, really important that you exercise your voice and your right to be able to go out and organize, really, like bring people together, bring community together, unite, you know, around a common goal of, I have this vision for Hayward, so I definitely want to like continue working towards that, right? And so everybody has a different vision. I know that we recently had a meeting with the Hayward Collective, and folks were talking about like, what is their vision, right? And it was, you know, everybody had a different thing, right? But I think there's this common goal of like, we're all from Hayward. Yeah. You know, we all like want to see Hayward be better, right? In a lot of ways, right? And so how do we tap into that?
Yeah, and I think just being, you know, up until recently, I was the youngest person on the council. Being a woman of color, being from South Hayward, there's a lot of nuances. So for me personally, it was just having to have that honest conversation with people. I know it might feel like it's not enough, we're not doing enough, but I can point out 7-10 things that we're doing now that we weren't doing 2 or 3 years ago. So we have to focus on, I agree, it's painfully slow, but we are making progress. And for some people, they just get it, and other people are like, nope, impatient, I want to see it immediately. But at the same time, we have to understand at the end of the day, the city's responsibility is to run a city. You know, like we get criticized, like, how come you're not doing this event and that event? And I have to tell people the city is not in the business of throwing parties. Like, that comes from the community. The community wants to throw this event. We will partner with you. We'll find a way. But having people, the public has to understand it's the roads, it's the libraries, it's your water, it's the garbage, it's, you know, safety, lights. All of that stuff is why we are charged and what we have to do. Everything else is, we want to do it, but we got to make sure that other stuff is in order before we can pursue other things. Right. And that's, I think, the constant kind of challenge, because the public is wanting more in different areas, and they have the right to be heard, and we got to have a plan. What are we going to do to address those concerns? But it's a timing thing. It's timing and resources as well. Like, people have all these great ideas and everything we want to do, but at the end of the day, who's going to do the work? So all of that has to be analyzed and assessed, which can be frustrating, because it seems like easy to just throw an idea or a project,
right? And then think that somebody else is going to do the work for you. Yeah. So one thing that one conversation that I've had with people is that, you know, me being part of the Hayward Collective, that's just one perspective that's happening in Hayward. So then how do we foster that social change, social justice space, so that people feel like, hey, I feel empowered to start my own club, organization. I feel like, let's say the Hayward Collective is not focusing on this, but I want to, or somebody else from the city's not doing this or that, you know. So how do we foster that social change bubble so that people feel safe and empowered to be able to learn public speaking or whatever it is, right?
I think just connecting with organizations that are doing it well already, just to kind of learn their best practice and expertise. You really just have to be a partner and collaborate with people to kind of learn what works, what doesn't, and then you have to just adopt your own style to it. But one thing I think the city can do well at is once our new library opens, which hopefully will be before mid-July, there's gonna be lots of rooms for community space. So I think there is a great opportunity. People will have to reserve in advance and there'll be guidelines around it. But right now people can also reserve space at the Weeks Library. There's rooms at City Hall, everything with advance notice. But we can do a better job at providing the space for people to gather. I also think connecting with our community services manager. They work with a lot of our nonprofits here in Hayward. They're great at making introductions in terms of people that have shared interests or passions. And I know that Hayward puts a lot of emphasis on that because money is limited and resources are tight. Partner with other agencies that are doing similar work to bring your mission forward. So I think it's just about communicating and knowing what's out there.
Okay, cool. One question that I have is being on city council kind of like a novela, like a soap opera? Like, is there drama that goes on that like the public just doesn't know about? And is it like brothers, sisters, y'all fight? Like, what is that like?
It's interesting. I mean, I think some of us have personal relationships. Others it's just professional. The dynamics have definitely shifted. One thing was when I got elected in June of 2016, we also voted to move our elections from June to November. So for 2 cycles, most of us will have 5 additional months on our terms, right? So it's going to take 2 cycles before everything realigns. But with this last election, November, what we saw is record number turnout. So before we'd get about 20% turnout of voters, it was over 45% in this last election. So that's really, really exciting because that's more and more people paying attention and more people being engaged. So whenever you have change on a council, any group, because it is such a small group, it takes time for people to kind of learn their learning styles, and then everyone comes at it differently. You know, some of us are in it for the long haul, others just are on a mission. It just depends. So I wouldn't say it's a novela because everything's public. I mean, when we meet in closed session, it's confidential matters. And it's usually pending litigation or a lawsuit. And it's not like we meet in closed session for hours or on end. So anything that occurs, the public is there to see. So if you were to see anything be said or done, if you were at a meeting or watching the video, it would all unfold. It's not like people tell me things like, oh, do you have these secret deals and all? It's not like that. So I think people think it's kind of like House of Cards or like this other stuff that goes on. It's like, it's not on the local level. It's not. But also, I can't speak for other cities because I know a lot of times when I interact with people, we can't violate the Brown Act. So for example, anything on Tuesday night's agenda, I could talk to 1 or 2 council members, kind of brainstorm, hey, what are your thoughts? Not on everything, but if you wanted to, you have the right to do that. You can't talk to an additional person because that would be a violation of the Brown Act. It's you basically having a pre-meeting, right? So we have a lot of people that come to us for different things, and I will tell them, like, I don't know, because they'll ask me, what are your colleagues thinking? I'm like, I don't know, we haven't had the meeting. And they literally don't believe me that we haven't had these side conversations. So that's one thing I think is very unique about Hayward is we truly, truly follow the rules. And I'm not calling out a specific city that doesn't because I don't know. But what I am surprised about is when I'm dealing with certain professionals, they're surprised that we truly all haven't had a side meeting. So I think the public should be very proud and to know that we're doing things through the way we should. There's no shady stuff going on.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but there's been novella stuff way before I got on council.
Oh, yeah. No, I know.
There is stuff. Yeah, there is stuff in the past.
Yeah.
And for me, so I got my BA in sociology and my master's in public administration. So one thing that I'm very, very focused on, and I think probably bore people to death, but I think it's so important. I'll give you one example is last year we renewed our city manager's contract for 5 years. And I think some people were like really taken back by that. It's not very common that you give a city manager a 5-year contract. But for me personally, I know the quality of the work and there's a vision for Hayward. And if we truly want to get things done, we need to have continuity and stability. That's really, really important. The school district, for example, prior to Dr. Wayne, that superintendent position was a revolving door every year and a half, every 2 years. And I truly feel that is one of the reasons why our school district has struggled with performance. It's not that we don't have amazing teachers. We have phenomenal students, but when the leadership isn't stable, it impacts everything. It has a domino effect. So I come at my role as a council member more of a MPA background. Like what if you need your team to be solid, right? And then if it's not, you address it. But you want to make sure you can carry out the goals and the vision.
Yeah.
Constant influx and change is not going to be healthy for anyone.
It's amazing to have this conversation because I remember being in high school and not feeling any type of proud, you know, that I was from Hayward. Like, it didn't feel like anything. It was just like, well, I come to this school, I live here, whatever, you know. You know, I remember, you know, knowing students that had, for example, come from San Jose, and, you know, in San Jose, they have a lot going on in terms of, you know, even just having a team, like the Sharks team, or, you know, going downtown or whatever it is, right? And so people felt that pride, right? And so I went to San Jose State for 5 years and then came back, and then just traveling, you know, I started kind of getting a feel for, you know, I'm not from New York. I'm not from anywhere other than Hayward, right? I was born in San Leandro, raised in Hayward, you know, and so there's a lot of opportunity to make change here and to start at the ground level, right? Because a lot of people aren't. I'm now starting to see a lot of people being more and more proud of being from Hayward, and I want my business, for example, I want my business to be connected to Hayward, and when people think of Hayward, they think of my business or whatever it is. That's something I saw out that I thought was really cool, you know, that I hadn't seen before. And so I guess the point that I'm trying to make is just, you know, it's really important and key to, especially for the young people, to understand that, you know, this is your land. Like, you can do, if you see something that's not going right, you know, talk to somebody, start organizing, talk to your friends. You know, there might be somebody else that's feeling the same way.
Absolutely.
You know, right now in particular, I'm wanting to get more involved in doing like social events, you know, definitely wanting to foster performance artists.
We should connect, because one vision I have, I really want for South Hayward, I could see it. I want probably Glad Tidings, because right there on Tennyson, but a parking lot with a DJ and the big lights at night, and everyone's just out there dancing,
barbecuing.
Yeah,
oh, they have the big old barbecue.
Yeah, that's what I want, and we need to do more stuff like that for the young people. We want them to feel like proud to be home, connect, the sense of place. When I was growing up, we'd hang out at La Vista roller rink. We'd go to bowling alleys. So we also, I think as a local government, we got to put more of a priority and emphasis in bringing back those amenities, because we want our young people to stay here. So I feel like there's still a lot of unmet needs there. We are constructing a 50-acre park on top of Tennyson Road. That's going to be huge. I forgot to mention that earlier. We're getting a bowling alley at Southland Mall, which is a month out. But we need to do more recreational social events for young people, because I feel like that's the missing link right now. I think with everything going on in downtown Hayward, we have fun stuff for young adults now, but what are we doing for the teenagers? You know, basically, I'd say 12 to 20. That's where we need to focus on, making sure that they have amenities, safe places to be creative in Hayward. They don't have to leave Hayward. It's great that we have 2 BART stations. I know people like to go to Berkeley, San Jose, San Francisco. That's all fun, but that we should make it a prideful thing to stay home. Because that's one thing I know that now that I'm older, still like to go out and dance and have a good time. But the places in downtown, I just tell my girlfriends, if this was around when I was coming out, I would never be. There's no reason to leave, and that's what I think is amazing about
No
Hayward.
coverage charge.
No coverage charge.
Free parking.
Uber home in 5 minutes. But yeah, so Hayward is up and coming, and I kind of want to keep it that way. Like, I'm proud of Hayward, but I don't really want everybody to know about Hayward,
right?
No, because then things will really change, and they already are changing. So like, let's slow that down. Let's let the people that made Hayward the amazing place that it. Not that I don't want growth, I don't want investments, not that, but we got to do it all in balance.
Yeah. Just as a final question, how do you maintain that balance? You know, because if a place, let's say, you know, we're talking about Hayward, if a specific piece of land is going up in value because the people themselves are recognizing, oh, this is my land, like I want to do this, that, I want to take ownership of it. It's going up in value, but in a lot of ways it's also attracting maybe outside folks to like, I want to buy land there or whatever it is. What is that balance?
I think we're doing better as a council, because we want the public to understand that. And I tell people this and they get frustrated, but it doesn't matter how great my ideas are, it really doesn't. Because if I don't have support and you can't get the votes to get anything done, nothing's going to happen, bottom line. So I've known that ever since I've been involved. I was on planning commission prior to being on council. So it's really, really important to have that support in order to move things forward, right? So I think collectively, we're doing a better job at looking at what's called complete communities. We want to make sure that there is affordable housing, that it is on site, that there's grocery stores, that there's parks, that there's retail. So we're doing collectively a better job at that. But for me personally, I was the only one that voted no for the Sohay project, which is right next to South Hayward BART. And for me, I just felt like that was a real missed opportunity. There is the place where we can maximize density and go up 5, 7 stories. There we could have had more retail. There we could have had more affordable housing. The developer did a decent job in addressing some of that, but in my opinion, I felt like it wasn't enough. So I was the only one to vote no on that. And I think my colleagues took that vote in terms of we need to do more next projects. So I'm confident that we're going to be asking more of developers the next go around, because you're right. That's the thing of not wanting so many people to know about Hayward, because all this outside people want to come in. It's like we still want to preserve it for the people that made Hayward what it is. So I think it's hard. It takes courage, but we have to be able to like demand more and ask for more of the people that are coming into our community, because we can't refuse it, right? We don't want these old dilapidated buildings. That's not going to be helpful for anyone. But we do have the responsibility to make sure when we cast those votes that we're asking more of the developers.
Awesome. So as a final question, what are you listening to right now? What's on your playlist?
Oh my gosh.
What do you work out to? What do you dance to? What's the soundtrack of your life?
Right now, to be honest, it's Nipsey Hustle.
Hey.
Yeah. So he has had a profound impact on my life. Once I heard of his passing, I watched every interview I could possibly watch and just listened to his lyrics. And what I appreciate about him is he's truly real, very honest about his upbringing. But what I admire most about him is he's someone who didn't, forget where he came from. He came back, he's providing people with jobs and started, I think, over 10 businesses. So just knowing someone that was that passionate and just kind of walked that walk, wasn't just all about talk and rapping. So I love his music. I love what he has to say. I actually had an art self-portrait of him commissioned. So that's pretty much, I'm obsessed with that right now, beautiful. With listening to his music. I like, I think it's Khalid, a couple of his songs. Can We Just Talk? That's a song that I like a lot. Okay. And just listen to whatever's on 94.9, KML 102.9. That's what keeps me young. Yeah. Listening to that music. It's the music my daughter loves. Yeah. So that's what keeps me young.
We gotta go graffiti hunting to find that piece by shout out Sabasita, who did that. Yeah. But one of the things, so actually I've been really curious about this, but just again as a final question. Yeah. But what is a Mexican person's or Mexican people's responsibility to the African American community? Because I feel like there's a lot of like things going on that like we can connect about, and not just like to like Mexicans to Black folks. We should all be helping each other, but there's a particular like connection there.
I would go beyond that. I think just people of color in general, immigrants, refugees, like we all kind of got to support each other's causes. And that's one thing I didn't say earlier, but was a real eye opener for me growing up in Hayward, going to different schools. I had best friends that are African American, Chinese, Afghan, and that really, really, like, it wasn't just about me and my needs. There was other people that had their struggles. So I think if we can all lend support in any way we can, we're stronger together, right? Yeah. So we need to care about each other, care about our neighbors. One thing I'll just tell you, I found parking on your street, which was amazing. On my street, you can't find parking because there's so many people. The homes are overcrowded, right? And so for me personally, it's like I got neighbors complaining about it, and I just try to tell them, like, it's the housing market. People have to rent out rooms. People have to survive. And it might be frustrating to some people, but I just look at it as that's one less family that's homeless, one less family that's sleeping in their cars. So I say that just to say if we could all take a step back and put ourselves in that other person's position, maybe we'll find a way to kind of connect or where we have that commonality.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
being
you.
here. This is Haystack Mujer TV. We have Elisa Márquez. I'm your host, Rosaura Figueroa Mendoza, Rosa Salvaje. This will be posted on haystackmujer.org, so be on the lookout for it. And this is a Haystack Mujer right here. So if you're wondering what is a Haystack Mujer, it's right here personified. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, peace.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Shout out to you. Peace. Yay.